Hola, mi nombre es Angélica Bernabé, soy de Perú, soy la directora del Centro Especializado en Tartamudez y hoy estoy junto a Nina G. Ella es doctora en psicología, es docente en California, en Estados Unidos. También es autora del libro Stutterer Interrupted, The Comedian Who Almost Didn't Happen. Y además de ello, también es comediante, realiza stand-up comedy en diversas ciudades de Estados Unidos y también ha dado conferencias en ciudades como Nueva York, entre otros. So, thank you so much, Nina, for joining me today.
Hola! Thank you so much. That's the extent of my Spanish, somewhat. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for accepting my invitation. So, well, today we will talk about stuttering as always on these videos, but also this time we will talk about stuttering and co-occurring conditions. And one thing I need to say before this is that Nina is a person who stutters and she also has dyslexia. And I'm a person who stutters as well, and I also have ADHD. So I think it's a nice opportunity to talk about it. And yeah, so the speech and language pathologists can understand this better, and also other people who stutter and people who have two or even more conditions. So, well, let's start with the relation between this condition. How was in your case, Nina?
For me, it's such a strange journey because when I was 2.5, I started to have articulation issues. So for cheese, I would do, and for chicken, I would do. And my parents were like, why is my kid chirping? I don't think that is normal. And so they got me into speech when I was 2.5. And what that was an early sign of a central auditory processing disorder, which then eventually in 3rd grade turned into dyslexia. And so for me, having dyslexia, and then I also started to stutter around that same time, I wasn't fully embraced. It wasn't really great inclusion, and my parents would have to fight every year. So sometimes I thought about the dyslexia, and it was mostly about that. That was it's so weird. People think that the stuttering is a bigger issue than my dyslexia, but my dyslexia is so much a bigger issue. It's just that people have to wait for what I'm going to say, and they have to sit through my stutter. But my dyslexia is a thing that I struggle. So we don't always look at the two conditions, but I know for me, especially when I do comedy and I have brand new stuff, I'm processing the words and I'm processing the language, which is the dyslexia, and then I'm putting it through my mouth, which is the stutter. So it's an interesting process because there's fluidity and there's fluency. And when you first say, the more that I use my left side of the brain, the more that I stutter, the more that I'm trying to be deliberate with my words, that's when I stutter more, which is why I resent everybody who says, oh, just think about what you're going to say before you say it, because that's like the opposite of what helps me. But when I write jokes, I have to go through that process. So it's always very interesting because my dyslexia impacts me the most at that point, but people think it's the other thing.
Yeah, and that's quite interesting because the others just see, the visual part. So it's like, oh, she can talk. That must be a big thing. But no, in fact, is for you, it's just the opposite. Is the dyslexia is that you have more challenges with that, and yeah, that's also very, very, very important to me. It was when I started to taking pill for ADHD, there's this big thing of the pill will increase my fluency or will decrease my, and And yeah, it was like, well, the only way I can help is to try, because some research say that it can increase that. But to me, it was, I mean, I didn't feel anything with the pills in terms of my way to talk is exactly the same. And actually, I mean, I fully accept my stuttering, so I didn't care that much if I was ready to start more or less. But I was I was curious, you know. I wanted to know how it's going to be, but not in a bad way, in a way that I'm curious how this is going to be. And but no, I didn't feel anything. So so yeah, at the end is going to depend on each person. And yeah, and even if it's more likely that we are going to start more with those pills, to me it was just as usual, just as always. So yeah, I don't have any trouble with that. But yeah, I can imagine that for some people could be more difficult if they don't accept their way to talk, and taking these pills they stutter more, so they can feel more frustrated. Yeah, I can imagine that that can be more difficult, but well, to me at least.
You know, and that is the thing about stuttering, is it's like it's such a good training ground for resiliency, because like we all have those peaks and valleys. It's such a tactile experience. It's such an experiential way to have resiliency and to understand resiliency, that things are just going to go up and down, and you go with it and you ride the wave. You know, I've never said this is so good, that it's like catching a wave and you ride it, and then you get back on, and sometimes you're fluent, sometimes you're not. I don't know if this stutter is a wave or not, but or if fluency is a wave, but the metaphor I think works.
Yeah, this is how it's starting to work, like. And yeah, we need to embrace that, because yeah, it's quite important.
Yeah, no, and that's so interesting. And this is why, you know, I'm always asked about stuttering, or I'm always asked about dyslexia. I'm rarely asked about the intersection of those two. So I really appreciate this conversation, because like things are occurring to me that I never get to talk about and I never get to think about. I remember in when I was in my undergrad at UC Berkeley, and I would ask my biological psych teacher's aide if she could help me get an accommodation, and then I'd say, because I stutter and I have dyslexia, and suddenly it was like, ooh, you do? I've read about you and your brain. And I was like, I'm not a guinea pig. I'm a person. Just treat me like a person. And it's so weird, because you want other people to understand what you have, and then set it aside, but integrate it in with who you are. So it's this weird thing that they see all of you, but they know this other thing too. So it's really weird, because I sometimes feel like I'm under a microscope, especially when I meet some people who have a degree in speech and language, because I feel like they're counting my stutters, and they're like, ooh, she's doing this, she's doing that. It's like, just listen to what I'm saying. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And yeah, the apart from that, the stigma the society have is, it's a big thing, you know. And yeah, I mean, also for parents, like I hear some parents at a school saying to their children, like, don't play with that children, because, and it's like, dude, we don't have a virus. Like, coronavirus is a huge thing, you know, but nowadays.
Yes, you can't catch it by spores in the air. You can't catch stuttering that way. So, but please wear a mask anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why we need to talk about this.
there was, when I was younger, I worked at a daycare, and there was a kid, he was 3 years old, and he was stuttering a lot. And I talked to his mom, and it's like, oh, I stutter too. If you have any questions, let me know. And she's like, well, he doesn't really stutter. He just repeats the same sound over and over again. And I'm like, that's a stutter. That is the definition minus the blocks. And so there is that stigma. And the thing is, people like, how do you think people can change that stigma? What do you think, like, in the world, what do you think some of those interventions are?
We need to talk about this. And yeah, I mean, I know that I can change that world, but at least I want to do something. And I guess that the only way to really do this is to start, like one by one, and someday we will be more. And yeah, but I think that.
Yeah, no, and I'm the same way. It's just like, if we can all, and that's where it's so great to have this family, like this stuttering family, because a lot of us are on the same page, and it counters it's the narrative, and it counters what the media oftentimes says about our experiences. And so I'm always so relieved when somebody who actually stutters has that voice, has that platform, so that they can represent us in a way that is authentic. Because when you watch TV, my TV's over there, that's why I'm pointing to it. When you watch it, you can see that on American Idol or on America's Got Talent, they touch on it, but it's not in the way that I want to see us. And that's why it's so great to have something like this, because you can represent yourself without a filter of someone who is fluent and the stigmas that they carry.
Yeah, we can see on television and in different platforms, like how they talk about stuttering, like this bad and terrible thing that those poor children have. And it's like we can't talk in that way. It's like how they are going to accept themselves if we are always pushing and saying you talk bad. Like, it's like we can do that. And that's the other topic, and it's acceptance. How did you find your acceptance process, like having to accept just two conditions?
Yeah. Well, so this is like a general answer, which is, I think once you accept one, you accept another, and then another. It's like you already have a framework for it. And that's why I really appreciate the academics studies of disability studies, because it lays it out that the problem with having a disability isn't in the person. It's not that we need to change. It's that society offers barriers. And so a barrier for somebody who uses a wheelchair would be stairs. A barrier for us, like for me and my dyslexia, it's words, whether it's written words that I put down or written words that come through my eye. That whole language processing is a barrier there. But also with the stutter, to me, it's the attitudinal barriers that are the biggest issue. It's when other people are jerks, or when they discriminate against us, or when they pity us, when they give us the face. And I know you know what the face is. It's oh. So the face is one of those things. And so for me, I feel that, like acceptance, like sometimes we have to model that for other people so that they know what it looks like. And so, for example, like when I went into my last job interview, I said, I stutter and you're just going to have to wait for all my brilliant ideas. And it was my very passive aggressive way of telling them to shut up and giving them the tool of not interrupting me. And I think we sometimes have to model that for others. Oh, but I did not answer your question. So so let me go back 3 minutes ago. So it's a pathway to acceptance, I think, for stuttering is a similar one for dyslexia. And for me, I talk a lot about Joseph Sheehan, and I'll go ahead and share the slide real quick.
There it is.
There it is. But let me move this. Okay, here we go. All right, so Joseph Sheehan, who was a psychologist who worked with stuttering, he said that people who stutter had a level of denial, shame, anxiety, guilt, fear, and hopelessness. And I have felt this around my stutter, but I've also felt it sometimes even more around my dyslexia. And, it's the guilt of, writing an email and forgetting to say not. And then how the communication just rolls and you're like, oh, I screwed up on that and I feel so bad about that and this is all my fault. Meanwhile, the other person wasn't communicating all that great anyway. But nonetheless, I blame myself for that. And the big piece is the isolation and the hopelessness. There's that thing that happens when you have dyslexia and when you have ADHD is that you try and you fail, you try and you fail, you try and you fail, so you just stop trying. And that's learned helplessness and how that gets embedded into you. So the way that I see the iceberg is, I know he wanted the water line to go down, 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 down. So it was only a little bit of feelings and a lot of stuttering. I don't think, at least for me, that that's possible. I think that those feelings need to be reframed, and stuttering and dyslexia and ADHD and whatever else, it doesn't have to be these things. I think you can have acceptance instead of denial, and shame can turn to pride, guilt to comfort, or forgiveness. I think forgiveness is a better word. Anxiety to kindness, fear to hopelessness, or fear to courage, hopelessness into hope, and most of all, isolation to community. And the stuttering community, I wish the dyslexia community was more like the stuttering community, because I think with dyslexia, we kind of just kind of melt into the world and we're not obvious. In stuttering, we're a lot more obvious, so we have to find each other and we have that opportunity. But with dyslexia, a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm fine, I'm underemployed, or I'm unemployed, but I don't think that it impacts me anymore. When we're not very clear about how dyslexia happens into adulthood, and with ADHD, I assume that is a similar thing. And also, you did this. You did. Where is it?
Where is it?
You did this one. So you want to see what the words are?
Yeah. Aceptación, orgullo, amabilidad, confort, coraje, esperanza, comunidad. And as you were saying, it's really important because, we are a big community of people who stutter. Like at the beginning, I feel like, it was only me who was experiencing this. And then when I realized how many we are and how amazing we are, it was the best part. Like, and that's very, very important, like to switch this idea, because suffering doesn't have to mean fear, isolation. It doesn't have to mean this. Of course, some people can have this feeling when they just starting And yeah, that's completely normal. I'm sure we also feel that, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be like this the whole time, and that's why it's important to do this.
Yeah, and also the thing is that we will slip back into that sometimes, and that's okay. There are going to be some days where your acceptance is not there, and where you are like saying, "Hey, honey, hey, partner, can you call up and order the pizza? Because I am having a hard day, and I don't want to deal with the other person on the line with my stuttering." So it's okay to not be acceptance 24/7. And also for me, what I found was I found the National Stuttering Association, but then it was called the National Stuttering Project when I was 16 years old. And I started to volunteer there. And there was a guy there, John Allback, who is a teacher. I'm not sure if he is retired now, and I assume he is, but he was a teacher. And even though I wanted to be a stand-up comic at the time, I also was thinking about being a teacher. And when I met him, I was like, oh, I could be a teacher if I want to, because it didn't mean that you had to be fluent in order to do that job. And we need to see each other, and we need to talk about our experiences. And when I did that, I was like, I can see that I'm holding myself back. And that's why my book is called, by the way, it's right here, so Stutterer Interrupted. And I entitled it that because we get interrupted all the time, yes. But I found that I was interrupting myself. And when I went to that conference when I was 35, I realized that, and I came back and I changed my life. And so all of that is because of the community of people who stutter. And that's why we need that. And that's why it's part of our acceptance.
Yeah, and also we need to share this kind of conversation a lot, because what I mean, one of the first feeling I had when I was diagnosticated with ADHD, I didn't feel alone because I'm a person who stutter, but I feel it being a person who stutter and a person with ADHD. Like, and I was like, I met a lot of people, amazing, they're so funny who stutter, but I didn't meet someone like me, like with those things. And yeah, I feel that sad in that part. Of course, now I know that, like, there are a lot more of people, and but yeah, and it's a process. As I always say, like, there will be some days, there are some days when I feel like I'm very frustrating with my ADHD, because I really need to be focused on something and my brain is being somewhere else, and I really need to work on this, and it's like, I don't know. So yeah, but yeah, also those feelings are completely normal, and I'm still working on that. I can accept my stuttering like fully. I don't have any trouble with that, but I'm still working on accept my ADHD. And yeah, what you say was very interesting, because it's like I know how an acceptance process is, because I had to experience that. So in some way, I know that how this other acceptance process is going to be. Of course, it's not exactly the same, but it's like I have some idea of that. So yeah, it's just try to be uh, uh, a little bit positive on these things, and that's why we are here talking about this, and talking to and also trying to normalize these two conditions.
And I feel that sometimes, whether it's in speech the therapy or therapy, or in stuttering organizations, that there's not a lot of room to integrate all those different parts of yourself. It's like, we're only talking about stuttering here. Like, there is the group in America passing, or in the US passing twice, which is for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and trans people who stutter, because they kind of felt that they had to check their sexual orientation or their gender at the door, and they want to bring in all of themselves. And I think whether it's ethnicity, whether it's economics, whether it's education, whether it is a disability, that we need to make room for people to fully integrate all their identities, all of themselves, whether it is a disability or whether it is their love of cars. If you love cars, then you know what? Let's go find some people who stutter that also love cars, and let's talk about that. But, you know, just those opportunities to find each other and to bring all of ourselves into it. Because for me, it feels like I have to check dyslexia at the door. And I've even been told a long time ago that, oh, well, we're not really talking about that here. We're only talking about stuttering. I was like, ah. So I hope organizations learn to bring all of that in and let us experience that.
Yeah, and that's what is one of my personal missions, you know, to bring these things, because we need to talk about this. And yeah, I hope we could share the world, but we can do that. But so we will start doing this conversation, trying to normalize these two conditions and how important it is to start talking about this and also working about this. I'm very happy about this conversation. I think that people can get a lot of this. And yeah, I'm sure that they also will be really interested and listen a little bit about our experience and about how it's living with two conditions and the importance of start talking about this. So thank you so much, Nina, for your time, for being here. You are very nice. I'm very happy that we can connect. So thank you for that.
Thank you. This has been lots of fun, and it's my South American premiere. So this is the first time that I've done anything in South America. So I'm very, very happy to join you.
Yeah, thank you. Y muchas gracias a ustedes por haber visto ese video. Espero que les haya gustado y espero también que podamos empezar a hablar más de estos temas que son tan necesarios y tan importantes. Y ya saben, hay que hablar de esto con plena naturalidad, porque más que ser condiciones, somos personas. Y eso es súper importante también. Así que espero que lo hayan disfrutado y muchísimas gracias.